Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how to open up, disconnect, and remove a NuTone model SM428 master station from where it's installed in your house. This is a model SM428. The SM428 came out in the late 1970s. It was the very last stereo music intercom system that NuTone made, and it is considered to be the quintessential 80s NuTone intercom system. So let's have a quick look at what we're looking at here before we get to it. Here we have NuTone, it's called a Musicom, music communication, solid state stereo intercom model SM428. It has a real solid oak case to it. It's quite thick. It sticks off the wall probably every bit of 3.5 or 3 3/4 inches. The majority of the electronics are actually mounted outside of the wall housing, which you'll see when we open it up. So here we have our selector switch. We have AM, FM, tape, phono, and auxiliary. Part of the SM428 system line, you could have included a built-in 8-track player. You could have included a built-in cassette player. There was also a fold-down record player, and then you have an auxiliary input where you could connect some auxiliary device. Although in the late 70s and early 80s, I'm not sure what that would have been. Maybe you would have hooked it up to your television or something like that. Here we have our 10 room control switches, 5 on the top, 5 on the bottom, and these allow you to adjust how each station operates in your house. You have an off position, a radio intercom position, standby. Standby is basically intercom only, no music. And you have listen in or monitor, like a baby monitor in your house. Most of the time systems are all set to radio intercom. Not sure why that one wasn't. And you have to remember it's a stereo system, so you can have one pair of speakers connected to every single one of these. So stereo is right and left channel. Most NuTone intercom systems are monaural systems, which means you have one speaker in each room and right and left channels are combined together and play out of the one single speaker. This is stereo, so you could have a total of 20 speakers scattered throughout your house. You also had an option on this system where you could have monaural speakers also. Down here we have our AM/FM tuning dial with our tuning knob. We have a jazzy little signal strength meter here, which lights up when the unit is on. And as you tune particularly your FM stations, the needle rises up and you want to get it dialed in just so you get the strongest possible number on the meter that you possibly can. You have a mono and stereo switch. So if you put it in stereo, this is for FM. If it's receiving a stereo broadcast station, this FM stereo light will light up. Or for weaker stations, you can put it on mono, and that cuts out some of the background noise that you get on poor reception FM stations. Here we have our primary on-off switch. We have our balance control for left and right balance. We have volume, all speakers, slides up and down. We have a bass adjustment and a treble adjustment. You want to be particularly careful of these sliding controls because the actual controls themselves, the part that the knob is connected to and is inside the unit on the circuit board, they're all made out of plastic and they weren't the very best choice in my opinion. So you have to be careful with it and you don't snap off the little stems because they're very hard to repair, and finding replacements is almost impossible nowadays. You also want to be careful that you don't lose these little knobs. These fit on the little sliding volume control stems, and for some reason it seems like the majority of these that we get in for repair is missing at least one of these. And this knob is not used on any other model, so there isn't a lot of them to steal from other things, so you have to be careful. One of the other things I'll point out is the model SM428, like all systems made of this era, it has a remotely mounted transformer. It's not in the wall behind the unit. It's mounted somewhere else in your house, in a coat closet, in the garage, where the water heater is, where the furnace is. For you folks who have attics and basements, it could be in either one of those. It is also the only system that NuTone ever made, that uses a 12-volt transformer. Why did it use a 12 volt transformer? Beats the heck out of me, because everything else in those days were 16 volts, but this one's only 12. This is by far one of the simplest models that there is to remove or uninstall. You may not think so when you open it up, but I'm going to show you how easy it actually is. You're only going to really need 3 things to do this with. 3. You're going to need a Phillips screwdriver. You're going to need some masking tape. I prefer blue. Green's okay too, or the traditional tan is fine. And a marker or a pen. I like a Sharpie because it's easy to write with. To open up the set, there are 2 screws that go through the black plastic faceplate. There's one here in the upper right hand corner and one here in the left hand corner. It is attached to hinges at the bottom. So when you take the screws out, it will fold down, and there's supposed to be a support strap that's hooked in to prevent it from flopping off and falling on the floor. One thing to be careful of is when you take these screws out, you do not want to use any kind of cordless drill, cordless screwdriver, or anything like that, because you could strip out the heads of the screws, and they're recessed way down inside the holes where they're hard to see and get to, and if you strip out the heads of the screws, it's going to be really hard to get it out. Likewise, when it comes time to put this back in, you never ever use a cordless screwdriver or a cordless drill, because if you over tighten the screws, you can break off the plastic standoffs at the ends where the heads of the screw push against to hold it tight against the wall, and if you break those off, there's no way to make it stay, and then you've got a real problem. So I loosened that one. Now we'll loosen this one. And as you finish loosening the screw, it will want to pull away from the wall and tip down because it's kind of front heavy, and as you fold it down, we can see it was installed properly because it has its support strap hooked to the back of the wall housing, which will help support the weight of the unit. Here, looking down at the back of the SM428, we start over here on the left. You can see there's a variety of circuit boards that all stand up perpendicular to the main board, which is down in here. And here at the top, we have 2 amplifier boards. Remember, it's a 2-channel stereo amplifier design, so you have left and right channels. The amplifiers are the ones with these big, thin aluminum heat sinks. Here we down here on this second long rectangular board, this is our audio preamp, intercom board, long board here. Down here at the bottom in the left corner is the primary power supply board, and here, this board next to it, this is the FM multiplex board. Buried down inside here, where it's a little hard to see, is our door and intercom talk listen module. Down here, underneath this big bundle of wires, is our AM/FM stereo tuner. Not just a standard tuner like standard monaural systems would have, but an actual stereo tuner because it's a stereo intercom. Here we have, at the top right hand corner, we have our terminal board, and the terminal board is where all of the cables from all of the remote speakers that come from all the different rooms come down, and all the different color wires are all connected to the terminal board. Now, what you have to envision is that in this particular installation, it looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cables, and each cable has 8 wires in it, and that's a lot of wires. That's 56 wires. If you had all 10 stations installed in your house, you would have a total of 80 individual colored wires all connected to their little tiny screws on the terminal board and these big terminal standoffs here, and that's a whole lot of wires. And then there would be a few other miscellaneous ones also, and you might be thinking, oh no, what am I going to do? How am I going to take all those wires off and then remember where they go and mark them all and then put them all back on later on when I have to put the thing back in? And I can't do that. Well, NuTone was pretty smart about this unit. They made it easy for service where you don't have to take all the wires off the terminal board. What we're going to do is we're going to remove the terminal board from the master station itself. The other connections we have to remove are here at the top. We have our AM/FM antenna connection, and down here we have our wires that come in from our remotely mounted low voltage transformer. That's the white cable with the black and red wires in it, and they're connected to wires down here on the chassis with these orange wire nuts. And in this installation, because they have that all-important NuTone 8-track player in the wall next to this, we have an audio cable with some RCA plugs here plugged into the auxiliary input jack. So we have to undo those also. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take the terminal board out, because that gets the big bunch of wires out of the way, and it'll make the rest of it easier to do. Here in this sideways view of the back of the master station, here we have our terminal board with all of the rows and rows and rows and rows and rows of screws that all have either individual wires connected underneath each screw, or all of the similar colors are joined and attached to these large screw standoffs that travel down the edge of the board. In the middle of the board, we have this really long white nylon socket, and it goes from here all the way down, keeps going further, keeps going even more, and ends all the way down here where you can barely see. None of these wires have to be disconnected from this terminal board. What we're going to do is we're going to unplug the terminal board, that's what this big socket connector is for, from the main board that's mounted to the inside of the faceplate. The terminal board is held onto the back of the master station with two screws. There's one screw right here in the top corner, and there's another screw here in the middle corner. And what we're going to do is we're going to take those screws out. Now this particular screw is also the screw that holds the support strap in place. So when we take this out, it won't be supported anymore. So you have to be prepared for that, because it's going to want to flop around a little bit until we put this screw back. So we'll do this one down here first. So the unit is supported by the support strap, and all you have to do is unscrew it and reach in there and pull it out. And there it is. Just like that. Now, don't lose these. Put these in a little plastic bag, put them in a little paper cup, do something with them other than lose them, because you're going to need this later on. See how easy it is to drop it? I'm talking to you and I'm not paying attention, and I didn't put it in a cup yet, and I dropped it down inside the set. Fortunately, I was able to retrieve it. So don't be like me, don't drop the screw. Now we're going to take this screw out right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to support the front of the unit with my hand. I'm going to take the screw out. This screw is shorter than the first screw, see, shorter. And also, my screwdriver is magnetized. That makes life a little easier sometimes. We'll move the support strap out of the way. I'm still supporting it with my hand. I don't want to just drop it and let it hang, because it could pop off the hinges way down there and fall on the floor, and we don't want that to happen. Once you've done that, then what you can do is you reach in here and you carefully pull up on the edge of the terminal board here. See it come up? And then you reach down on this side and you pull up on that side, and it simply pops off. How about that? All the wires are connected. Everything stays connected just like it always has been. You just simply unplug it, and then you take this and you tuck it back into the wall housing back that way to keep it out of the way. This was specifically designed by NuTone to be done this way, and it actually explains this in not only the service manual and the installation instructions, but also in the owner's manual or operating manual for this unit, in case somebody needed to take it out. So at least somebody was thinking in those days. So we'll tuck that out of the way in the back of the wall housing, and because I don't like things floating around, we're going to take our support strap and we're going to put it back with the screw in the standoff, and we're going to hook the hook back up in the hole in the rough end. I'll show you how that works in a minute. One of the other things that is now accessible is this plastic strip right here. This plastic strip is sort of a spacer and a standoff that when you push the terminal board down on all of these little pins back into the nylon socket, it helps support the weight of it when you're putting the wires on the screws and tightening things down and pushing around on it and that kind of stuff. And this is actually not permanently attached. This actually comes out. And again, we don't want to lose it. You're going to need this later on. See, it just lifts right out. So you can do one of two things. You can either leave it in here and put a piece of tape over it, which is what I think the best thing to do would be. All you got to do is put a little piece of blue tape like this and that'll hold it in place so it doesn't get lost. Or you could put it somewhere safe, say with the little bag of screws and things that you're going to have, because you're going to need it when you reinstall this. But don't lose this. It's important. And no, we don't have any extra. It's not the kind of part that anybody would ever have an extra one of, because why would you? Because it's just a little piece of plastic, and why would have you ever lost it? So let's go ahead and finish uninstalling our SM428. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to unplug the audio cables right here that come from the built-in wall 8-track player. These are standard RCA plugs, and they fit into standard RCA sockets. And there are actually 6 sockets altogether, and they're marked on the board as to which input they belong to. This first one says phono, that's for our phonograph, that's here. And then we have tape, which is here. And then we have auxiliary, which is the ones that our cables are plugged into. There are 2 cables because, again, this is a stereo unit, so we have right and left and right and left and right and left. 2 channels, 2 different inputs. What you don't want to do is, when you unplug these, you don't want to twist them overly hard. You don't want to rock them side to side. You don't want to do anything that might damage how the sockets are soldered onto the board, because we don't want to damage things. We just want to uninstall it. So really all you have to do usually is grab it carefully and pull up, and it'll simply unplug. And you can see here, it's a standard RCA plug. So we'll pull that one up, and then we'll pull that one up. And because we're being conscientious about what we're doing, this is where your blue masking tape comes into play. We're going to put a little piece of blue tape around the cable, and we're going to write on it where that was installed. So that was connected to the auxiliary jack, AUX. If it was connected to the tape jack, you would write tape. If it was connected to the phono jack, you would write phono. Your installation, you might have up to 3 pairs of these, and you have to unplug all 3 of them, and you should label each one as to where it goes, so when you put it back later on, you'll know. Once you have those unplugged, you can put that back into the wall housing, and we're halfway done. So let's go ahead and get the rest of it done so we can get this taken out. I showed you before, this is our AM/FM stereo tuner, and off the corner of the tuner is this really heavy, somewhat stiff gray antenna cable. Comes off the corner right here, and it loops around, and it goes up to these connections right here. On this connection, this is where the antenna that's supposed to run up into your attic are connected. These are little slip-on connectors, so we need to disconnect those. Here's a close-up of the little barrel connectors that are connected to the little terminal strip with the 2 screws. The 2 screws are where the ends of the wires from the antenna would be wrapped underneath the screws and then tightened down. And what we need to do is unplug these 2 barrel connectors from the 2 pins. These are just slip-on connections. You don't have to take the screws out. Please don't drill out the rivets and leave the terminal strips connected. It's not necessary to do that. I don't know why people do. It's a lot of extra work. All you have to do usually is take your finger and pull down, and they'll slide right off. If they're a little stubborn, use a little pair of needle nose pliers to grab them a little bit and pull them down to slide them off. You can see how easy that is. They actually just sort of fell off halfway on their own. So let's go ahead and do that one more time. See if we can get them plugged in a little better to make it a little harder to do. Now they're plugged in all the way, which is how they really should have been in the first place. And now if I'm tugging on it, it doesn't really want to come off so easily. So I'm going to take my needle nose pliers, and I'm going to go down here at the bottom of the connector. I'm going to wiggle a little bit and pull down, and you can see that one slid off. And I'll do the same thing on this side, and it just slides right off. Now the tuner is disconnected from the antenna connection, and we only really have 2 more things to do. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to disconnect the power from the SM428 master station. So this white cable is the cable that comes in from our remotely mounted transformer. Remember, it's 12 volts, not 16. And it's connected to 2 black wires that come off the back of the SM428. One of the black wires is just this little short one right here, and it's wire nutted onto the red wire that comes from inside the white cable. And this one, this black wire that comes off the back of it, it actually has a fuse holder with a fuse in it. The SM428 is also the only intercom system ever made that had a fuse. And why does it have a fuse? Beats the heck out of me, because you don't really need the fuse, but it has a fuse anyway. And then the other end of the fuse wire is wire nutted onto the end of the black wire that comes out of the white cable. So all you have to do, untwist the wire nuts, separate the wires, and put the wire nut back on the end of the wire that comes from the transformer, because the wire that comes from the transformer is the wire that has electricity in it, and the one that comes off the back of the master does not. So you don't want this shorting out on anything. Now again, it's only 12 volts, so it's the equivalent of a flashlight with about 6 batteries in it. So it's not going to hurt anybody, but you want to cover it up anyway. And then we'll do the same thing with the red one. We'll untwist it, we'll separate the wires, and we'll put the wire cap back on the end of the red wire. Now, there aren't a lot of miscellaneous loose wires inside of a SM428, but good practice is you should label this so you remember what it's for. And what we're going to do is we're going to put a piece of blue tape on it, and now we're going to find our orange wire nut that fell off, and we're going to put it back on again. And then on the blue tape, we're going to write, you could either write transformer and spell it out. I always write TR because I know that TR means transformer, and that just makes my life easier. Once you've done that, you can tuck this back in the wall housing and get it out of the way. Now the other thing we have to do is SM428s have a ground wire, and the ground wire is right here. It's this green wire, and it comes from a screw down in there where it's hard to see, and it's simply wrapped underneath this screw that holds the hinge to the bottom of the wall housing. So all you have to do is loosen the screw a little bit. Don't take the screw all the way out, because then the hinge will fall off and nothing's supporting that side of the unit. So you just loosen it a little bit, just enough to slip the wire out from under the screw, and then tighten it back down so the hinge is held tightly. We're almost done. The only thing we have left to do is disconnect our support strap, and then we can lift the master station away from the wall. The support strap, if you remember, is attached to the corner screw connection that held the terminal board in place, and it travels all the way up here, and on the end of it up here there's a metal hook, and the metal hook is hooked through a hole that's in the back of the wall housing right here where my finger is. So all you have to do is tip this up a little bit and unhook it, and it comes right out. See, there's the metal hook right there. And when it comes time to put it back in, you just tip it up, put the hook back through the hole, voila, it's all done. Very simple. Once you've disconnected this, there isn't anything holding it to the wall any longer except where it's on the 2 hinges. So now is the time you have to be extra careful, because if it flops off the hinge and falls on the floor, you're going to damage your solid oak case, and then you'll be unhappy. So to remove it from the hinges, you tip it up slightly at about a 45-degree angle, and you lift up and you kind of wiggle it around just a little bit, and it comes away. And that's how you uninstall a NuTone SM428 master station. I hope you found this interesting and perhaps helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up on YouTube, because that always helps. There'll be a banner right here that shows you how to subscribe. Go to our YouTube homepage, click on the bell or the wheel, put in your email address, and every time we post a new video, you'll get a notification and you can watch it. That's all for today. See you on the next video.